My name is Elena Waverly, and this Christmas, I didn't miss the invitation. I was never on the list. The snow had started falling early in Soho that evening, as if trying to hush the truth I already knew. They left without me. Again. Not by accident, not by oversight, by design. Last year, I planned every detail. The flights, the chalet, the custom menu that catered to every allergy and ego. This year, not a call. Not even a forward. Just Harper's story. Waverly Christmas Aspen, here we come. No tag, no mention. Just filtered smiles and a jet I used to dream of. They thought I'd stay quiet again, that I'd let it pass like I always did. Dignified, polite, invisible. But this time they boarded a jet they didn't own and stepped into a name they tried to erase. Because while they posed with champagne under borrowed stars, I was finalizing a title transfer. Aurora One, my company, my aircraft, my legacy. They wanted distance. So I gave them altitude. And now, they'll look up and see my name in the sky. The snow had started early that evening, swirling softly through the narrow Soho streets, as if trying to blanket the noise of the city in something gentler. From my window, I could see the soft orange glow of the Christmas lights strung along fire escapes, blinking quietly into the night. It was peaceful. Too peaceful for the week of Christmas. But that made sense. This year, I wasn't invited. Last Christmas, I was the one booking every detail. The flights, the chalet in Vermont, the private chef who catered to Lorraine's absurd dairy allergy and Harper's gluten-free mood of the month. I had made sure everyone had monogrammed robes in their rooms and stocked the wine fridge with Charles's favorite Bordeaux. And yet now, not even a text. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I looked down and saw Harper's face mid-laugh in a boomerang loop. She'd posted a story, a group shot at JFK's private terminal. My parents, Nathan, Harper, and a few extended family members, smiling like a commercial for high-functioning dysfunction. Harper's caption was worse than the image. Waverly Christmas Aspen, here we come. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before I stood and walked to the kitchen, barefoot on the cold wood floor. I poured myself a glass of water, though what I really needed was something stronger. Maybe I had missed a message. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe... I opened my texts. Nothing from Lorraine since her Happy Thanksgiving forward of some inspirational quote. Nothing from Nathan since May, when he'd sent me a one-line email. Heard you're still doing that plane thing. Hope it works out. I tapped to call my mother. She picked up on the second ring. Elena, hi honey, how are you? I kept my voice even. I saw Harper's story. A pause. Oh, that. Yeah, that. Aspen. The jet. The Christmas I wasn't invited to. Well, we thought you had other plans, sweetie. You're always so busy with that company. I'm not busy enough to be excluded from the family trip. Elena, she said gently, the way she always did right before saying something cutting. Don't be dramatic. It was just... We assumed. You've been distant. No, I said, keeping my tone ice flat. You've been distant. I just stopped chasing. There was a silence, the kind that fills a canyon. Then she exhaled like she was the one being burdened. We'll talk when we're back. Enjoy your holidays, darling. She hung up. I stood there for a moment, staring at the now dark phone screen, then turned and picked up my coat. I didn't even bother to finish the glass of water. 15 minutes later, I stepped into the lobby of our co-working space near Hudson Yards. The building's holiday decorations were a little too enthusiastic, giant plastic candy canes and white faux snow stuffed into every ledge. But upstairs, Areo Jets was quiet, sleek, and mine. We'd been operating in silence for 3 years, building from nothing, starting with VIP charters, then acquiring a dormant private fleet license through a holding firm Dean helped me structure. And now, finally, our biggest asset had just transferred. Dean looked up from the table as I entered, brushing snow from my shoulders. Elena, he said, pushing a folder toward me. It's done. Aurora One is officially registered under Elias Holdings. I exhaled through my nose. Full transfer? He nodded. Cleared through Delaware Corp Registry yesterday. You own the plane. 100%. I walked to the table, flipping open the folder. The title transfer glared back at me in bold letters. So clean. So final. Aurora 1, our first large body acquisition. Sleek, black silver trim, retrofitted interior for ultra VIP service. The same jet now airborne, with my family on board. I leaned over the blueprint of the jet, my fingers brushing the corner of the page. So they're flying in my plane, I murmured, my voice quiet, amused and burning. Dean didn't speak. He didn't need to. He knew this wasn't about the jet. It wasn't about the money or even the fact that they'd left me out. It was the principle, the pattern, the erasure. I assume they don't know? I asked. He shook his head. Holding structure's clean. Your name's nowhere obvious unless they dig. Good. I closed the folder, letting my hand linger a moment before picking up my phone again. Harper had posted another story, this time from inside the cabin. Champagne glasses, catered charcuterie. Nathan grinning like he'd earned any of this. And then, just a flash. The shoulder of a flight attendant passing by. The Aerojet's logo gleamed on the uniform. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "You wanted distance. I'll give you altitude." The only time I felt seen by my grandfather was the last time I saw him. It was late June, 2020. The Hamptons estate was buzzing with catered trays and whispered condolences, but no one had the decency to look me in the eye. Not even Nathan. Not even my mother. I stood in the back corner of the main parlor, a full 40 feet from the casket, my heels sinking into the carpet as I strained to hear the eulogy that Charles insisted on delivering himself. I wasn't given a seat. I wasn't even given a program. A cousin offered me one out of pity. Before I could take it, Charles walked past, murmuring, "This is for shareholders only." He didn't stop walking. He just said it like a bouncer at a club I never applied to enter. I wanted to scream that I was a shareholder, that William had told me I would be, that I had value. But I said nothing. Because screaming in a room where everyone has already decided you're invisible only makes you look unhinged. I didn't cry when they closed the casket. I didn't speak during the reading of the will. I just listened as name after name was read, as shares and properties were handed out like holiday cookies. Nathan got the board seat. Harper, already treated like blood, got a trust fund from a man she'd only met twice. My name never came up. I left before the second toast. No one noticed. 3.5 years later, I sat across from Dean Carter in my apartment, the soft glow of the living room lamp casting long shadows against the hardwood. Outside, the snow hadn't stopped. It was building up like a metaphor. Dean had a small metal file box on the table between us. He unlocked it slowly, methodically, as if it held more than just paper. In a way, it did. "I should have told you sooner," he said. "But I promised William I'd wait until the moment was right. Until you proved it. Not just to them, to yourself." He handed me a sealed envelope. The paper was thick, embossed. My name handwritten on the front in my grandfather's unmistakable slanted script. "Elena," Dean said gently, "this is yours. And it's time." I slid a finger under the wax and peeled it open. Inside was a one-page addendum, notarized and dated exactly 2 weeks before William died. The ink was faded but firm. "If my granddaughter, Elena Waverly, has established and is operating a successful aviation enterprise before the close of 2025, she shall inherit 27% of my personal holdings, including voting shares in Waverly Holdings." There was a signature, his, and a witness, Dean's. I knew he was hiding something, I said, my voice quiet, almost reverent. He told me once that I saw further than the others, that the sky didn't intimidate me. Dean smiled faintly. He meant that. I leaned back, letting the paper rest on my lap as I stared at the ceiling. Everything rushed back at once. The way Charles had cut me off from strategic meetings, the night Nathan accidentally CC'd investors without my pitch deck, the time Harper suggested I take a sabbatical because I seemed too intense. Every door closed was starting to look like a wall they built on purpose. He wanted me to build something, I said slowly, not beg to be let in. Dean nodded. And you did. Oreo Jets has cleared FAA compliance. You've acquired and fully registered a luxury class fleet. Your valuation just crossed $12.4 million. That's not a startup anymore, Elena. That's a company. I rose and walked to the window. Across the street, lights flickered in a bakery I'd never bothered to notice. The world was moving forward, quietly, without asking permission. I opened a drawer beside my bookshelf and pulled out a smaller envelope. Inside was the only thing I took from the estate the day I left. A handwritten note from William. Build your sky. Make them look up. I returned to the table and placed it beside the amendment. This isn't about revenge anymore, I said. It's about alignment, about correcting what's been broken since they tried to bury me with him. Dean didn't say anything, but I could see something shift behind his eyes. Something loyal, something unshakable. I picked up my phone and opened the flight app. Aurora 1 was already in Aspen. I tapped the manifest request line and turned to Dean. Get me on Aurora 1's flight manifest. I'm going to Aspen, quietly. They flew across the country in a jet they didn't own, and walked into a name they tried to erase. Aspen's morning air bit at the skin like crystal. The sky stretched wide and cold above the tarmac, a clear canvas waiting to be cracked open. The snow was fine and glittering, swept neatly by the concierge team that stood ready along the heated walkway. Everything gleamed, as it always did here, where money insulated you from both weather and consequence. The jet rolled to a gentle stop. Aurora 1. Its silver skin shimmered beneath the high-altitude sun. From inside the lounge, I watched as the stairway lowered, and my family began to descend like royalty. Charles in his camel coat, Lorraine draped in furs she once insisted she'd never wear again. Nathan followed, sunglasses perched on his head like he thought he invented the look. Harper brought up the rear, clutching her little designer dog in one arm, the other already raised to begin filming. The concierge team greeted them warmly. Champagne was offered. The name Waverly was repeated multiple times, each mention a small paper cut. But the final cut would come from me. A concierge with a sleek digital tablet stepped toward them. Mr. Waverly, she said politely, the manifest owner is arriving shortly. We'll need their signature to finalize the return flight. Charles blinked. I assumed that was taken care of. It is, she said with a smile. We just need the owner's approval on site. Harper, ever the social opportunist, panned her phone toward the jet and giggled. Hope the mystery rich guy isn't too late? She was live. I stepped out of the black SUV at that exact moment, my boots crunching softly against the snow. No entourage, no noise, just presence. I was wearing charcoal wool, leather gloves, and silence. The staff stiffened slightly. They'd been trained. The woman with the tablet turned to me immediately. Ms. Waverly, she said, a touch more breathless than necessary. Welcome. I nodded, taking the tablet from her hands. I tapped through the authorization screens, my signature appearing in practice strokes. The name glowed on the top line. Owner, Ms. Elena Waverly, Elias Holdings, LLC. Harper's phone lowered a little. The screen still facing outward, but no longer filming. Lorraine's smile faltered. Nathan didn't move. Charles's eyes narrowed, his mouth just slightly ajar. Elena? I didn't answer him. Instead, I handed the tablet back to the concierge and walked past the group, heels clicking with surgical precision. My eyes didn't drift, didn't scan for reactions. I wasn't here for commentary. Nathan turned toward the jet as if seeking explanation from an object. Then his eyes landed on the branding near the tail. Elegantly carved in matte silver, no longer subtle. Oreo Jets, a Waverly-owned company. He flinched. I caught it in my periphery. Wait, she owns the jet? Harper stammered. Charles's jaw clenched, his nostrils flaring, but he said nothing. I didn't say a word either. I simply nodded toward the runway and walked past them. ChatGPT. John Noy. This isn't just a jet, I said, setting the folder down. It's the evidence you tried to erase me. The fire in the stone hearth popped quietly, like a distant ticking clock reminding everyone that time and consequences were catching up. The dining room, repurposed for this ambush, still smelled faintly of cedar and overcooked beef. The long walnut table stretched between us like a courtroom bench. No one touched the drinks. Charles sat at the head of the table, his back straight, arms folded, jaw tight. Lorraine perched beside him, wringing the hem of her cashmere sleeve like it might release her from the moment. Nathan looked bored, chin propped on one hand. Harper, for once, wasn't filming. I opened the folder slowly, deliberately. Let the paper whisper across the wood. Then I turned it around and pushed it toward Charles. This was dated 2 weeks before grandfather died, I said. Signed, witnessed, and sealed. Charles didn't look at it. I don't recall any such amendment. No, I said, leaning back. You wouldn't. William gave it to Dean to hold, not to you. He snorted. Dean was a glorified clerk. He was never executor. A voice cut in from the door. Dean Carter stepped into the room, gray scarf still draped over his shoulders. He walked calmly toward the table and placed a second folder beside mine, this one thicker, sealed in a tamper-proof chain of custody pouch. Charles's face tightened. Dean said, "This is the original." Notarized, logged, and preserved under William's direct instructions, along with communication confirming intent. He opened it and slid a one-page document across the table. It was a twin of mine. William's signature crisp, the ink darker, fresh. Nathan chuckled dryly. So what? It's a vanity clause. It's not even enforceable unless she builds and operates an aviation business before 2025, Dean finished. Which she has. Charles broke his silence. A hobby startup with a shell company and one plane doesn't count. I've acquired 4 aircrafts, I said. Operated charter service for Fortune 500 clients, passed federal compliance. Closed a strategic partnership with Ember Sky last quarter. Our books are clean. Our fleet is growing. Harper shifted uncomfortably. So what if she built something? That doesn't entitle her to 27%, I said. That's what the clause grants me. 27% of William's private holdings, voting shares, equity, power. Silence. Then Harper, too fast, too flustered. Well, you said the investor already pulled out, that they backed out after I spoke to them. The room froze. Charles's head turned slowly toward her. Nathan's eyes narrowed. What investor? I asked. She blinked. I didn't mean, I reached into my bag and pulled out another folder. My fingers were steady. I laid the contents on the table like a deck of knives. This, I said, tapping the top page, is an email from August 2021. A principal investor I pitched to, Lauren D. from Cinera Capital, who said she received unsolicited input from someone identifying as a close family member of mine, that I was unstable, under investigation, and on poor terms with the family name. She pulled her interest 5 days after receiving that. Harper's lips parted. That could have been anyone. She quoted your exact phrasing from a dinner we had the same week, I said. You told me over dessert that I was playing with other people's fire. Dean added quietly, the email metadata confirms it came from Harper's private Gmail. We've subpoenaed the archive. Charles's voice dropped. Is this true? I was trying to protect us, Harper said quickly. She was reckless. If her company failed under the Waverly name, it would have... You don't own the name, I said. You borrowed it. Temporarily. Lorraine stood. We didn't know. Elena, I swear, don't. I said, not harshly, but finally. You didn't ask. You didn't want to know. They had all looked so proud stepping off my jet, so sure they were entitled to everything they touched. But none of them had touched this. None of them had built anything. I gathered the papers into one neat stack, slid them back into the folder, and stood. Elena looks up. That's obstruction, interference with a legal beneficiary, and there's more, but I'll let the lawyers explain it tomorrow. ChatGPT, John Noy. For the first time at a Waverly Christmas, no one raised a glass. The great hall of the Aspen Lodge was glowing, chandelier light bouncing off crystal, silverware laid with surgical precision. Everything was set for celebration, but the air was leaden. 10 seats, only 6 filled, and not one held joy. A soft jazz instrumental played over the overhead speakers, some attempt by staff to maintain atmosphere. But it only added to the hollow weight of the silence. Plates clinked quietly. Cutlery moved with the care of people unsure whether they were eating their last supper. Harper cleared her throat and stood, napkin delicately in hand. Maybe we should move forward, she said, voice pitched to sound gracious. It's Christmas Eve, after all. Family. No, I said. Just one word. But it landed like a stone in the center of the table. Harper sat back down. Charles didn't look up. He had been pacing near the window, Scotch glass untouched, watching the snow fall like he could command it to reverse. Nathan pushed his food around, barely touching it. Sweat glistened at his temples despite the cold. Lorraine clutched her wine glass like it might give her absolution. I reached into my coat pocket and placed a small object on the table. Matte black, unassuming. A voice recorder. They all stared at it like it might bite. This was from a meeting in August 2020. I said evenly. At the New York Club. Nathan, you were there. So were you, Harper. You spent 13 minutes discussing how to quietly exclude me from any future board consideration. You even outlined talking points to tell investors that I was emotionally unstable. Nathan's head snapped up. That was recorded, I said. Legally. I had reason to suspect bad faith. And I was right. Harper's fork hit the plate. You've been recording us for years? No, I replied. Just the times I suspected you were conspiring to bury my name. I tapped the recorder once. This alone is enough to prove intent. Combine that with Harper's email and the attempt to void the amendment. And we've got a compelling case for both obstruction and malicious interference. Charles finally turned from the window. You've been building this case against us. I've been building a company, I said. The case built itself. Harper reached out, hand hesitant but moving toward the recorder. Tampering with evidence is still a crime, Harper, I said without raising my voice. She froze. Her hand hovered in the air like something suspended in amber. The room went still again. Then I picked up my wine, untouched until now, and swirled it once before setting it down again, untouched still. I'm not here to toast. I'm here to finish what my grandfather started. No one responded. No protest. No denial. They knew. I looked toward the fire. The flames moved gently, casting long shadows against the stone. Tomorrow morning, I said, I'll file the claim to transfer William's shares. Nathan, you'll need to clear your desk. A year ago, they said there was no room left on the plane. This time, I booked the whole flight. The air outside was thinner than usual, not just because of the altitude, but because of the silence that wrapped around the private terminal like frost on glass. The sun was still rising, casting a muted gold over the snow-packed runway. No paparazzi, no entourage, no family. Just the hum of jet engines and the hush of fresh snow. Dean stood beside me at the edge of the tarmac, his gloved hands clasped behind his back. He didn't say much. He never did when words would only get in the way. We both looked at Aurora 1, the flagship jet I had once only imagined owning. Its sleek body gleamed under the floodlights, the logo crisp near the tail. Oreo jets. I signed the last set of documents with a pen that felt too elegant for what it now symbolized. Transfer of the 27% voting shares. Complete. Formal action to remove Nathan from the executive board. In motion. Waverly Holdings, whether they accepted it or not, now had me at its center. Dean handed me a sealed envelope. Copies are going to their council later today. I nodded. Let them scream into the void. I won't be there to hear it. He hesitated. You could stay. Make them face you every day. I already did, I said. In silence, in patience, in building something they thought I couldn't. He smiled faintly. Then I suppose you're not staying for the drama. I'm leaving before they try to twist the ending. We turned back toward the building. Through the glass of the upper lounge, I could see them. Lorraine, seated near the fire, holding a scarf she hadn't touched since New York. Charles, standing, arms crossed like a man who still thought posturing meant control. Nathan and Harper, side by side, but not speaking. None of them moved toward the window. I took out my phone and typed the last message I would ever send to my mother. Don't call this revenge. I simply stopped letting you edit me out. I hit send, turned off the phone, and slipped it into my coat pocket. I wouldn't be needing it midair. The snow crunched softly beneath my boots as I approached the jet. The door was already open, steps gleaming silver against the soft dawn. A flight attendant at the base of the stairs offered a warm smile. Welcome aboard, Ms. Waverly. The title no longer surprised me, but it still landed deep, not because of what it meant to others, but because of what it meant to the girl who once watched her family board without her. Inside, the cabin was quiet. Leather seats, walnut trim. A small tray of breakfast items sat untouched on the side counter. I didn't need it. Instead, I walked to the window seat, the same one Harper had filmed herself in just days before. I reached into my coat pocket one last time and pulled out the silver pin. 2 wings, my grandfather's. The only thing he ever gave me without condition. I set it on the armrest, then leaned back into the seat and closed my eyes for a moment. No noise, no apologies, no looking back. The engine rumbled beneath me, confident, low, determined. As the jet climbed into the early light, I opened my eyes and looked out across the sky unfurling before me. Altitude suits me better than silence. I used to think their silence was accidental, that maybe I was forgotten amid the rush of planning, the crowded dinners, the neatly arranged family vacations where no one remembered to ask if I'd be coming. But it wasn't forgetfulness. It was intention. I had once sat at the dinner table, handed the camera instead of a seat in the frame. I had browsed invitations that never arrived, bought dresses for events I was never actually invited to. I had been the shadow behind people who carried the Waverly name, even though I carried it too. But on that freezing morning in Aspen, when the private jet bearing the company logo I built lifted into the sky and my entire family stood frozen in the distance, I knew. I had rewritten the story. Not with a raised voice, not with rage or spectacle, but with quiet action, legal filings stamped in ink, and the only belief I had left after everything: belief in myself. I didn't enter the room to beg. I entered to remind them who truly carried William Waverly's legacy. Not the ones who lied well, but the one who rebuilt from zero. Not the loudest in the room, but the one who endured longest. I had waited long enough to no longer need an apology. What they tried to take, I reclaimed. Not by tearing things down, but by rising above them. I didn't need the chair they once pulled out from under me. I bought the entire table. And when I left Aspen that morning, no one waving goodbye, no words of blessing, no glass raised in farewell, I still smiled. Because I didn't need them to witness my victory for it to matter. She didn't leave with rage. She left with proof that silence can be louder than any speech when it's backed by truth, strategy, and self-worth. Justice, though delayed, arrived not with fanfare, but with finality. Like a storm breaking through a polished sky, it reminded everyone that truth, once buried, will rise and demand to be seen. Because no matter how thoroughly someone tries to erase you, the sky keeps a record of the ones who dared to fly above it. They thought she'd stay silent forever, that an invitation left unsent wouldn't be noticed, that an empty seat at the family table wouldn't raise questions. But Elena Waverly wasn't silent anymore. She didn't need to shout. She simply let the truth take flight. While they boarded a luxury jet, she signed the ownership transfer. While they toasted to legacy, she claimed the shares. While they called each other family in carefully curated holiday posts, she walked in. No applause needed, just proof. Because sometimes what unnerves people most isn't anger. It's a woman walking forward in silence, holding everything they tried to bury. If you've ever been cropped out of the family photo, if you've ever stood outside a room you helped build, if you once believed that being good, being useful, being kind would earn you belonging, only to find out some people never planned to welcome you, you're not alone. Elena didn't reclaim a seat. She built the entire table. Thank you for staying through to the end of this story. If you've ever been called distant, difficult, or disappointing simply for refusing to shrink, then this space is for you. Hit subscribe if you believe that justice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to arrive, quietly, with evidence and without asking permission. Leave a comment if you've ever built your own sky after being left behind. Because sometimes the only thing you need is to fly high enough that they can't pretend not to see you anymore.